Hello friends, I'm very happy to welcome each and every one of you once again to this online lecture series. This particular series focuses on Western political thought, and today we are going to begin our lecture on Niccolo Machiavelli, the Italian political thinker. Since it is the first day, we are not going to go deep into his ideas. Rather, we are going to focus on a brief introduction of his life and his background, all the circumstances under which Machiavelli wrote his political treatises. As we all know, every thinker is the child of his time. So, without understanding the background, it will be difficult for us to understand his ideas. So we will first focus on his life and his background. As the title of our lecture says, Machiavelli 1469 to 1527, an introduction to his life and thoughts. However, before that, let me show you some of the books that I used while preparing this lecture. You can consider it as reading list for Western political thoughts. The first one is A History of Political Thought by Mukherjee and Ramaswamy. This is the book. It is a very, very good book suggested by many of the universities in India. Here you will get most of the important political thinkers. The second one is Western Political Thought by A.K. Mukhopadhyay. It was first published in 1980. And if you want to understand Western political thought from certain perspective, I think this is a very important book. And I also read History of Political Theory by Georges H. Savine. This book was first published in the 1930s. It is written from the historical perspective, so it contains many invaluable information on Western political thought. Some others are those Western political thought books written by Weber, Neerson, and Machiavelli-An. But if you really want to go deep, if you really want to understand that particular thinker in a more detail, it is always important to read their original writing. For example, The Prince and Discourses are two of the important books on political science. However, for undergraduate students, those general readers who just want to know a little bit about political thought, you can always look towards IGNOU, Lovely Professional University, Wright Technical University, or other open university. It is available in the internet. You can always download, you can print out, and you can always read. These materials are important because it is written by professors, and apart from that, it is written in a very short and concise manner and easy to understand. Let me show you one more. International Encyclopedia of Social Science by William A. Darity is important, not only for political science but for all social science students, especially for those who are preparing for UGC NET exams. I think this one is very important. However, you won't be able to buy this, so you can always see the library, you can always read in the library, or you can look for soft copy in the internet. It is all available. Now, brief summary or brief introduction of who Machiavelli is. He was an Italian political and military theorist, civil servant, historian, playwright, and poet. In short, he have so many characters in one person. They are from a well-to-do family who earned their income from the rent of the landed property. His father was a lawyer, so Machiavelli got a very good education. He got government job in 1498, but he was removed from his post in 1512. During his 14-year tenure, he was engaged in numerous and sometimes lengthy diplomatic missions, which took him to France, Switzerland, Rome, and Germany. Then in the latter part of his life, he spent most of his time reading and writing. Then finally he died in 1527 in his home in Florence. Now, to understand the background, let us see the political map of Europe. This is the contemporary map. This is Italy, and this is the crop map of the same map that I showed you earlier. Here we have France, Spain, Germany, three of the most powerful states of those days, and here we have Italy, which was divided into so many states during those days. And here we also have Switzerland. Though it was not a very powerful state, it was able to disturb Italy in many occasions. This is the map of Italy in 1494, an important year which will later on come. So here, Italy was divided into so many small states and 5 major states. In the north, we have in the northwest we have Duchy of Milan. Here we have in the northeast we have Republic of Venice. Then we have Republic of Florence at the center. Then Papal State at the center. And in the south we have the Kingdom of Naples. These many small states or principalities and 5 major states were ruled by different form of government. They were divided. There was no unity, and hence Italy was weak during those days. Now, as I said, economically Italy was quite prosperous, quite wealthy, because if you can see here, Italy was a largely peninsular country. So through the sea, they were able to trade with other parts of the world, particularly Asia and Africa, and even other parts of Europe. So by virtue of the geographical location, economically Italy was prosperous or wealthy. That doesn't mean that everyone was rich, but at least the Martians, all the middle class were rich, though majority of the people might have remained poor. As a whole, Italy was economically a prosperous country. However, politically, Italy was divided into so many weak states, and they often fall as a prey to the imperial ambitions of the French, German, and Spanish, the 3 most powerful states neighboring Italy during those days. During those days, there were so many discoveries and voyages. For example, Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492, and Vasco da Gama discovered India in 1498. And these discoveries enlarged the worldview of the intellectuals of those days. Earlier, it was thought that the earth was flat, above which there was heaven, and beneath it there was hell. However, with the discovery of New World, people started realizing that the earth was not flat as it was understood during those period, particularly the medieval period. Printing press was invented, and telescope was invented, and the debate on geocentrism and heliocentrism came to an end with Galileo telescope. And in the field of art and literature, for example, so many paintings have come up, and in the field of literature, so many classics have been written during those days. During the latter part of medieval period and early part of modern period, particularly after printing press was invented in the middle of 15th century. So towards the end of the 14th century, the Middle Age almost come to an end, and a new age of learning, literature, art, and culture have begun. This new age came to be known as Renaissance or rebirth in Italy. Particularly, Florence was the center of Italian Renaissance. not only in terms of knowledge, but it was also a commercial and banking hub, apart from London and some other cities of Europe. Thanks to the patronage of wealthy Florentine elites, Renaissance era artists and thinkers were able to spend their days doing just that. Instead of spending their time and energy in earning their income or earning their livelihood, with the support, with the patronage of the rich people of those days, or the wealthy people of those days, Renaissance period artists and thinkers were able to devote their time and energy on their own field. That was why so many arts, literatures, and writings were produced during this period. Later on, the Italian Renaissance slowly spread to the whole of Western Europe and the other parts of the world. Now let's come to the brief biodata of Machiavelli. As we all know, he was born in 1469 at Florence, Italy. So sometimes it's difficult to remember age. You can compare it with the birth age of Mahatma Gandhi, who was born in 1869, and you can remember like that. His father was Bernardo, a lawyer, a person who is well versed with law, and his mother was Bartolomeo. He was the first son, but it is said that Niccolo Machiavelli was the fourth child. That means he have some elder sisters. His family belongs to an ancient middle class family or a nobility class, and their income came mainly from the rent of the landed property. They might not be very rich, but they were financially quite stable, and therefore he was able to get the best education available during those days. He was married in 1501 after the death of his father and sister. The early days of Machiavelli was not much known to the Western world, but as I said, since he was from a nobility family, he was given the best education available during those days. He was well versed with Latin, art of oratory, and even he learned the art of cooking. But unfortunately, he didn't learn Greek. Greek and Latin were the two important languages of those days. And though he was well versed with Latin, he was not able to learn Greek. He completed his education from the University of Florence, and later on, he joined the government of Florence. About his personality, it is said that Machiavelli was quite a shy person or a timid person, but there was no weaknesses and failures on the literary side. He was so bold, so confident in his writings. His humanities training made him a hardworking, patriotic, honest, generous, tolerant, courageous, a man of integrity, and a good father, apart from being an affectionate husband, even if he is not faithful. So, as a person or as an educated person, he excelled in witty conversation and storytelling, and was an extraordinary literary artist. He have written not only political treatise and history, but he have also written many books on poems, comedies, and novels. When Machiavelli was born, Florence was ruled by the Medici family. But that Medici rule came to an end, and a republic was established in 1494. Some says that Machiavelli entered public service in 1494 itself, but some other books says that he entered the government service in 1498 at the age of 29. Doesn't matter whether it is 1494 or 1498, but what we can learn is, after the overthrow of the Medici's rule and a republic was established, Machiavelli entered public service under the rule of the republic. During his 14-year tenure, he was engaged in numerous diplomatic missions to France, Switzerland, Germany, and even Rome. Rome was the center of Papal States, which was controlled by the church. All these experiences gave him the opportunity to meet influential leaders or influential statesmen of his time. For example, he met the Renaissance Pope Julius II. He also met Emperor Maximilian of Germany. He met King Louis XII of France and Cardinal Caesar Borgia of Rome. Among them, it was Borgia who left a lasting impression for his ruthless and daring leadership. Though he was a priest, he was ruthless. He was able to use violence in the name of protection of the church while ruling the Papal States. In one of his visits to King Louis XII of France, he realized that his home state, that is Florence, was held in low esteem because they don't have a strong army. It was a weak republican government, and a state ruled by merchants, a state ruled by middle class people, a state ruled by business wallahs who don't want to spend so much money in defense. Since they don't want to spend money in defense, automatically Florence was a weak state. Even he himself, who was a diplomat, who was an ambassador to France, was referred to as Mr. Nothing. These experiences taught him or awakened him and realized many of the mistakes of his home state. And then from Emperor Maximilian, he learned his failures, which he described as secretive man without force of character. He was a good leader, he was a good ruler, but then he didn't have the character, all the army, all the human forces to fulfill most of his wishes. So he remained an unsuccessful ruler. All these experiences, interactions, or meetings shaped his ideas, which he later on wrote in many of his books. As I said before, the Medici was overthrown in 1494, and again, shortly, the Republic government was overthrown again, and it was replaced by Medici in 1512. So with the restoration of the Medici and the subsequent fall of the Republic, Machiavelli was dismissed from his position because he was a government diplomat or a government servant of the previous Republican government. Shortly after he was dismissed, he was accused of working against the Medici family. He was accused of conspiracy against the ruling family and was briefly imprisoned and put to question by torture. He was put behind bar, he was tortured, he was questioned for about 1 year. But with no charges proven, he was released, and after his release, he retired to his small estate to devote his life to literature. That means he devoted the rest of his life to reading and writing. Now, what kind of books Machiavelli usually read? His interest in reading was confined only to those good books that deal with life experiences, or those books written based on the experiences of the author or of the intellect. So he says that whenever he came back from work, he will change his dress, he will remove his working class dress, he will wear a new and fine clothes which will be suitable for a low coat, and he will enter into his library and read those good books, particularly the classics of ancient period. These are some of the thinkers that he used to read during his time. When he read these classics, he felt that, Machiavelli says that, he felt he was holding a dialogue with them. He was talking to them. He was talking, discussing, debating with those great minds. And he also felt welcomed by them as he entered the antique courts of ancient times. He didn't simply read, he also published so many books. It is said that he published more than 20 books. Some of them are political treatises, novels, poems, comedy, and etc. His writings focus on freedom of the country and the common good as its core themes. But some of the important books that he published from the political science perspective are The Prince, which is the most important one, Discourses, The Art of War, and The History of Florence. Many of his books were not published during his time. Of course, he published some of them and circulated privately among his close associates, but it was not published publicly because he was scared of the ruling family, the Medici. For example, The Prince was published in 1513, but written in 1513, but published only in 1532. Now, what were the main aims of Machiavelli when writing all these political treatises? The first one is, since Italy was disunited, very weak, and it was often attacked and controlled by neighboring powerful countries, his most important objective was to unify and establish a strong Italian state. He was not much interested in his state, but he was more interested in his country. He dreamed of a united, regenerated, and glorious Italy, which will become the most powerful country in the world. So, in order to become a powerful country, he argues that any means is justified, as long as the purpose was the protection and well-being of the people, and as long as it is to defend and extend the state borders. For this, Machiavelli argues that the state needs its own morality, which should be nothing but success. Success alone should guide the action of a state. For him, considerations of justice or injustice, humanity or cruelty, glory or shame were immaterial. Whether the means that you applied is good or bad, evil or not, doesn't matter as long as you achieve the goal to establish a strong and united state of Italy. He also says that war is a horror, war is a very scary thing, it is not a good thing, but it is not worse than defeat and subjugation. Instead of always getting defeated in the hands of more powerful countries and to be subjugated, it is better to wage war, to fight, to protect the freedom and independence of the country. Success should be the only yardstick to measure and judge all political activities, as long as it helps the country in becoming a more powerful and a more successful state. It doesn't matter whether you wage war or you use your diplomacy or you use any means available. Now, let's go briefly on human nature. We will discuss more in the next lecture. The individual, according to Machiavelli, is inherently wicked, selfish, and egoistic. He is fundamentally weak, ungrateful, exhibitionist, artificial, anxious to avoid danger, excessively desirous of gain, lacking in honesty and justice, and ready to act in a manner detrimental to the community. An individual always desires power, glory, and material well-being. They always want more power, more glory, or fame, and they always want to get profit or material benefit. And hence, their desires for novelty, fear, and love often dictated his action. Human mind, according to him, always tended to glorify the past, decry the present, and hope for a better future. So in short, human beings are inherently wicked, selfish, egoistic. They want power, fame, or glory, and economic well-being. So they lack honesty. Personally, though he was a very honest person, they lack justice, and they are always ready to act in any way to disturb the community, as long as it benefits their own personal selfish interest. So in order to control this kind of individual, Machiavelli need a very strong government. The government may be monarchy or republic. It doesn't matter, but according to Machiavelli, it should be a very, very strong government who will have all the power to control these kind of inherently evil-minded people, citizens. Now, let me briefly introduce his views on religion. Machiavelli was not much impressed with the medieval Christians' teaching or stress on asceticism, poverty, humility, misery, and the worthlessness of earthly person. The medievalist Christian had wrongly viewed the universe with a flat earth at the center, hell beneath, and heaven as its canopy. Meaning to say that Machiavelli was not much interested in the medieval Christians' stress to remain or to live an ascetic life, to remain poverty, to remain a life of humility, to remain a life of misery, and to think that this earthly life is worthless. The Christian faith often stress to focus on life after death. That means life in heaven, and they don't focus much on this earthly life. They consider this earthly life as temporary, and life after it is permanent. So for the Christians, particularly the medieval Christians, this teaching was very much prevalent. I think it is quite prevalent even today. So Machiavelli, as an educated person, was not very much interested in this kind of teaching. Rather, he was more interested in the Renaissance teaching of humanism, which defended the freedom and liberty of the human being, which defended the knowledge of the individual. So with the emergence of a new human being, and who is an ambitious, restless individual motivated by his self-interest, seeking glory and fame. In other words, he was more interested in what is real than what is spiritual. He was more interested on this earth than life after death. Though he was not very much in favor of the teachings of the medieval Christians, Machiavelli was simply anti-church and anti-clergy, but not anti-religion. He was not against religion. As you can see here, after he lost his position in 1512, he was not able to get back any favorable position, though he always tried to get such favor through his writings and others. He passed away in his home, in his private residence in 1527 at the age of 58. Some says 20, some says 21, and some says 22. It doesn't matter, but according to his book, it is 21. Though he was very much against the teaching of Christianity, he died as a Christian. He was given a Christian burial with a tombstone that says, "No epitaph can match so great a name." That was what is written on his tomb. One of his sons wrote that he confessed his sins to Brother Matteo, who kept him company till his death. This simply shows that he died as a Catholic Christian. Now, in the next course of lectures, we will focus on Machiavelli's thought on Renaissance or humanism, importance of history, human nature, corruption and civic virtue, religion and politics, or ethics and morality, and statecraft, advice to the prince, and finally influence and contributions. Thank you so much for listening to this lecture. Hope to see you in the next lecture again. Thank you so much.